All right, take two. First rule of this channel: we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel: this is not legal advice. So, a few news and notes to talk about. Looks like there's an arrest warrant for Rasheed Rice that went out. I am not expecting to move him down the board at all this year. Maybe a couple spots. Last year, Alvin Kamara's suspension for basically kicking a guy on the head was 3 games. And the league tends to wait until the entirety of the legal process goes through. So if Rasheed Rice's camp decides that they want to push this out into next season, I could definitely see that happening. So that potential suspension may not be until next year. If he decides he wants to plead out and just get it over with, and the league drops like a 2-game suspension or something like that, I could see potentially dropping Rasheed Rice until about like wide receiver 16. But even then, I'm pulling this up right now, that would put him like just above DK. The guys that I don't think have tight end or excuse me, wide receiver 1 range of outcomes. So he would be the edge of guys that I think I could finish as like overall league winners. That's where I would drop him to, even with a little bit of suspension. So looking more at my notes, the other thing is Nick Chubb's restructured his contract this year, so it does look like he's going to be staying with the Browns. That would have been one of the things to be monitoring in the offseason if he got cut. Right now, it looks like he's not going to get cut at all. I don't think this changes my mood on whether or not I would be drafting him. I wouldn't be drafting him at all. It just means it keeps the backfield like ugly for the Browns. Jerome Ford, Deonta Foreman, and Pierre Strong probably are not guys I would be interested in, other than like maybe in some builds where I would be starting the season with like maybe a Devontae Foreman or Jerome Ford as like my running back 2, something along those lines. So Nick Chubb like coming back, I don't want to play with the knee, and I don't want to play with the backfield. And then finally, CJ Ozuma, former Jets and Bengals tight end, he signed today with the Eagles. I don't think this necessarily moves the needle at all. Maybe makes me a little bit more skittish about drafting Dallas Goedert. I already don't want to draft Dallas Goedert. I don't think this changes too much. It gives them maybe a little bit more flexibility in certain personnel packages. It's maybe a slight upgrade to Jalen Hurts overall, based off the signing. Just doesn't matter at all. So moving on to this, I had a question a couple days ago about TJ Hawkinson. He wasn't ranked in the tight end ones. I wouldn't even be ranking him right now. I don't think he's draftable. Missed the end of the season, tore his MCL and his ACL, took a month off before the ACL surgery to allow the MCL to heal. ACL is non-capsular, which means it doesn't heal on its own. So he waited for the MCL to heal, and then he went in a month later, did the ACL. That's going to put him a month behind schedule on coming back from that. Bigger issue behind like knee injuries has to do with like cartilage damage. I don't know anything about that, and there's a lot of stuff now that involves like, hey, don't get that cleaned up, and wait, because you're going to have long-term knee damage if you don't get the cartilage, if you get the cartilage cleaned up. So like, who knows on all this stuff? I haven't really seen anything on it, and the biggest thing behind that is like, who knows, if he's going to be 100% this year. I would imagine he's going to start the season on the PUP, which means 6 games. If that occurs and then he has to quote unquote get back into playing shape, maybe he's available for like fantasy playoff pushes, going into your fantasy championship. At that point, like if someone drafted him, not you, and they got tired of waiting around for him, maybe you could pick him up off of waivers. If you're into that type of thing, like a bottom of your bench dart throw going into your chip push, I wouldn't be touching him. The other big thing behind this is you're still playing with like, who knows what's going to go on with Sam Darnold. This is part of the reason why I have Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 7, because I think there's a 50-50 chance that like Sam Darnold just isn't good, because he hasn't necessarily been good in the NFL. And even if TJ Hawkinson was healthy, I would have him ranked lower because of the fact that I don't know if he's going to be the number 2 in the offense, with Jordan Addison as the 3, or he would be the number 3 in the offense with Jordan Addison as the 2. And as we're going to get into a lot with our tight ends, they heavily have to do with like touchdown production. Sam Laporta had 10 touchdowns last year, and and he was a tight end 1. The next tier of guys had 6. So trying to guess where the touchdowns are going to go. Maybe TJ Hawkinson would be the touchdown guy late in the season, but again, I wouldn't be drafting him to find out if he's going to be the touchdown guy into my playoffs. I just wouldn't be doing that. Maybe in leagues where you have that IR slot, maybe you could think about that. Like I wouldn't be drafting these guys. Later on, when we start talking more about theory, in your snake draft leagues, where I can pinpoint some of the guys that I'm going to go after later on in the draft, like he's not going to be on my short list. Again, based off my draft position, I can narrow my picks down to maybe 24 guys, and he just wouldn't be on my board. But if I had to put him someplace, it would end up being in the bottom of this tier, which is the guys attached to good offenses that are probably not going to be the number one or number two. So moving on from TJ Hawkinson. So I talked a little bit about this the other day with Evan Ingram. So what we're looking at with tight ends is third year guys or second contract tight ends. That's the biggest thing we're looking at. And then we can start talking about like the athletic measurable freaks like Noah Fant, and then like we could also talk about like the draft capital that was put into him, because that still matters. It just tight end takes a little bit more longer to develop. So right now I have tight end contracts pulled up. He signed that 2-year deal with the Seahawks. He is now the number 11 per year tight end, $10.5 million. So like the Seattle Seahawks think that maybe he's going to be like their Evan Ingram. Maybe he would be my tight end 12, even going into like any league to start my season off, because of the potential upside where he could, have that roundabout Evan Ingram's range of outcomes. And you see like last year overall, like Evan Ingram's finished as tight end 2. I don't think he's got this 143 target, 114 reception, 963 yard type of season that Evan Ingram did, because Evan Ingram basically got lucky. Well, I shouldn't say Evan Ingram got lucky from a draft perspective. To think that Calvin Ridley was maybe not going to have a good year was something that we can discuss, because that's where he should have been going about, like, somewhere between like the 3rd and the 5th round of the draft. Evan Ingram's did finish the 2022 season like on a high note. It was more trying to guess that Christian Kirk was not going to be the number 2 in the offense, and that Evan Ingram was going to jump all the way up and basically be the number 1 with those targets. That was the long road for how he got there. So like when we look at a Noah Fant, maybe Geno Smith is, and I hate to say this, hot take, maybe Geno Smith is in the same talent tier as a Trevor Lawrence. Like we can maybe argue that, but it's hard to see how Noah Fant is going to jump an aging Tyler Lockett and a young JSN and a potential GK Metcalf. I can maybe see him definitely jumping Tyler Lockett. I can maybe see him jumping JSN from an overall like fantasy production standpoint. It's a hard road for him to also jump DK Metcalf, and that's where the biggest amount of his value is going to come in, trying to guess like we're going to get this uptick in touchdowns that it's going to allow him to jump into the next tier, because otherwise he's going to be in this tier of trying to guess yardage, and that's going to be a lot harder to go on when we try and guess like overall like fantasy points next year. So like a guy like Cole Kmet, who finishes like tight end 7, I believe he did finish his tight end 7. He only had 719 yards receiving, but he did have those 6 touchdowns. And that's how he was able to get there. So trying to guess, like, if we're getting just a middle of the road tight end at tight end 12 versus if we have a guy that can finish as like tight end 2 and maybe like be a difference maker in our overall fantasy playoffs. Like that's kind of the difference between maybe I can fade the tight end position and get a Noah Fant and get like tight end 7. Spending outside of premium content, that's something I could potentially be looking at. Let's see. So moving on, these guys would not be in the same tier as Noah Fant. Like these would be like the deeper dart throws that I would be looking at the bottom of my league. Like I would be saying like 14-man leagues. Maybe you're getting down there to like 21 draftable tight ends. Like so you're going with those deeper dart throws to be able to be competitive with those guys that actually land like premium tight ends. Darren Waller's got the possibility of finishing his tight end 1. That's if he actually like shows up to camp and he can stay healthy and blah, 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 blah. All those variables, like he's got the road to potentially be, a league winner. And the same thing with Hunter Henry. We will be, and I cleared Hunter Henry out. We will be looking at seeing like who is the actual quarterback in New England, if they could upgrade the offensive line, if they're going to upgrade the wide receivers. But like theoretically, with Hunter Henry, him moving into this Cole Kmet range and potentially being able to finish as tight end 7. Again, depends on how deep your league is. And if you're just trying to keep yourself alive on a week to week basis with the tight end position, that's where I would kind of put like Cole Kmet. So, or excuse me, Hunter Henry, he would be down the line, probably pushing towards tight end 20. Just very limited upside for him. So this tier of guys, like I already talked about Cole Kmet, the long road, expecting that Caleb Williams is like in that okay to good category. That's if the Bears draft him. Going to be probably playing behind opportunities of DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. I was seeing that the Bears could do something like Caleb Williams and Rome in the same draft, which would maybe move Cole Kmet down overall in the pecking order. But again, his main value from a tight end perspective is trying to get these touchdowns. And I could definitely see that his touchdown value is not going to regress this year. He's going to be in that like 6, 7, 8 category, like down the bottom line. Like he may be hitting like 5 touchdowns. I could definitely see him flirting with 10 as his like higher range of outcomes. So like he's still going to have some value. Dalton Schultz, I mean, you're just looking at the number 4, probably projected number 4 attached to CJ Stroud and what looks like to be a very good passing offense. And again, chasing the touchdowns, like he had 8 in 2021, where he finished as tight end 3. Like that's still going to be in his range of outcomes, that he's just the guy who gets touchdowns in that good of passing offense. And then Dallas Goedert, again, pieces of good offenses. It's going to relatively cost you nothing to find this out. Dallas Goedert, I think I talked about this before. I wouldn't be drafting him in any leagues. Dalton Schultz, I could definitely see throwing a flyer on like 10-man leagues. He would be fringe if some of these guys, in a 10-man league, I could definitely see that like there could be a possibility of having 15 guys get drafted from a tight end perspective. I don't know how many guys I would be looking at drafting tight end. Like the line that I would be drawing right now with draftable tight ends would probably be Noah Fant as I pull some of these guys up. After that, I don't know how many guys I would be chasing. The final tier of guys, and these are the guys that I would be tracing a little bit if I was in deeper leagues or I didn't really like my tight end that I pulled the trigger on. So Michael Mayer isn't going to be a third-year tight end, only a second-year tight end, does have the draft capital, doesn't have necessarily the athletic measurables. That's okay. I think he's good at football. Still going to be a hard road if there's an upgrade at the quarterback position for him to jump up into that category of being able to get like that 700 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns, which is probably going to be like the cap for being competitive on a week-to-week basis at the tight end position. But he's going to have that in his range of outcomes this year. K. Dotton's another one, probably has more value in dynasty leagues, expecting that he may end up being the number 1 at a certain point in the future with the Buccaneers. But with K. Dotton right now, he is going to be a third-year tight end. We have seen the increased value. Year number 1, 391 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Year 2, 455, 4 touchdowns. So yeah, could I definitely see him hitting about 700 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns this year, regardless of the age of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin's like regression, his production regression. Yeah, I could definitely see that being there. So he would be a fringe guy that I would be drafting in deeper leagues. And then I think that's Juwan Johnson. So now he's a second contract tight end, good athletic measurables, converted wide receiver. There's a lot of stuff to like about Juwan Johnson. There is a void for like a number 2 target to go on with the Saints. I talked about this before. 2022 finished as tight end 10 with those 7 touchdowns. So yeah, like in the range of 700 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns, definitely could be there. These are deeper dart throws. In my high school league that it kind of has a little funky. I talk about this. There's no rules about having a valid lineup coming out of your draft. So that means like I just don't draft kickers and defenses in that league. Last year, I think I drafted him with the 15th, my 15th round pick, and I tossed him away. That would be something else I would be looking at in some of these leagues based off your setting. How many guys I can just pull off the wire, see if I can hold on to them, see if there's a hype train, something like that. But like you're looking at something along the lines of like tight end 17 going into a draft, and I don't think they're very valuable. To finish all of this off, as I'll pull up back this so you could look at this, a few other guys to talk about. So Tyler Higbee has that ACL, Kobe Parkinson. signed that deal with for about $7 million a year deal, 3-year deal with the Rams. They have Davis Allen, they have Hunter Long. I'm not interested in trying to parse out the Rams tight end room when they have Puka and Cooper Cup. It's just not something I'm going to be interested in. Tyler Conklin, the Jets number 2, or the Jets starting tight end, I'm not interested in. Jonnu Smith, I just don't think is worth chasing for the Dolphins. Chig, I don't think is worth chasing for the Titans coming into the season. He does have like a lot of upside, 3rd-year guy, good athletic measurables. I don't think he's draftable at this point. The Broncos, they have Dulcich and Troutman. I don't think either of those guys are worth drafting, especially with the quarterback situation, what it is. Even though they both potentially could finish as the number 1 overall in that offense, it's just going to be projecting as a bad offense. Luke Musgrave and Tyler Kraft for the Packers. Like, both of these guys would have tight end 1 overall range of outcomes if they didn't have the other one to be competing with. And there's 5 wide receivers. I talk about the Packers for a while now. So like, I just wouldn't be expecting to try and parse that out. The Chargers do have Hayden Hurst and their other, Stone Smart. I don't even remember the other guy. And then could actually pull this up and be somewhat useful to everybody. Chargers. So they have Donald Parham. I'm not interested in. Nick Vannett came over from Seattle. I'm not interested in any of these guys. Hayden Hurst has been a guy that's been disappointed on a whole bunch of different years. I'm not interested in chasing that. It'll be interesting to see who the Chargers bring in the draft. Don't think it's going to be Brock Bowers. They're probably going to be a wide receiver, which makes all these guys even less interesting overall. The Colts are going to be a train wreck at wide receiver. I'm just going to stay away from them. And let's see. I already talked about the Rams. Panthers are going to be a train wreck. May not be a relevant pass catcher for them. And then the Bengals a little bit more. And I have this pulled up. There's 2 other guys I would talk about. Like, good thing if you're still sticking around. So Mike Gesicki signs with the Bengals. There is a possibility, because Tyler Boyd's not back, that he could take over that type of role. I think, and I was listening to them talk about this on I think it was PFF. It's not Io Sivas, it's Yo Sivas, I think is his name. Anyway, I could definitely see him slotting into that Tyler Boyd role. If it's Yo Sivas that takes over the Tyler Boyd role, then that would mean that Mike Gesicki is probably not fantasy relevant. If Mike Gesicki, and he's just always had the reputation as just being a big wide receiver, big slot, if he could take over the Tyler Boyd role, absolutely he would be that deep dart throw to go pick up. But that's going to be camp height stuff about whether or not like Yo Sivas is the wide receiver 3 or Mike Gesicki is basically to take over that spot. I've also seen mock drafts where the Bengals go out and they bring in Brock Bowers or another wide receiver. So like this is a deep dart throw that's something to be monitoring throughout the season or the off season. And then finally, like Zach Ertz, 34, maybe he could finish as the number 2 in this offense. Maybe they get an okay quarterback. Like, some of the quarterback prospects in the draft are, it's going to be very hard to evaluate how good that they're going to be. And it doesn't matter. Like Caleb Williams, I think has a few flaws to him. Drake May, Jaden Daniels. I know I was watching tape on JJ McCarthy before I clicked on this. Like, I do like him, but I don't know if he's going to like move the needle in his first year in the league. Bo Penix and Bo whatever. As I'm sitting here, like, stumbling all over the place. Like, I think there's guys that have possibilities to be fantasy relevant this year from a rookie quarterback perspective. I just find it difficult to say like, hey, I can know this ahead of time going into my draft come, like say the end of August, beginning of November. I want to Bo Nix. That's the guy's name. God, stage fright when I'm recording. So anyway, like those were the guys. So even if say like with the 3rd overall pick, like Jaden Daniels, I don't know how much that moves the needle for me with a tight end. JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix maybe make me feel a little bit better about attached to a guy like Zach Ertz later in the draft. But again, like you outside of like those 14, 16 man, like ridiculous leagues, like it's a hard road to think that like Zach Ertz can win you your league. Could he get up to like that 700-yard range, 6 touchdowns attached to a rookie quarterback? Absolutely. Is there going to be some disappointment and injury to go along with trying to guess some of these like deeper dart throws? Absolutely also. So anyway, I'm going to probably try by the weekend to get together the tight end rankings going into the pre draft. And I'll see you then.